we are incredibly proud to be able to show you what comes out of our clubs. Kirk Dominick grew up a member of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Pitt County, and he will tell you that the experience changed his life. We're excited he's back in Greenville now. Please join me in welcoming Kirk Dominick.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. First, I have to say that I have to apologize because there was a little confusion about my role, and as many of you know, there's a comedy show right after this to support the Boys and Girls Club, and I thought they had asked me to come and perform for the comedy show. So now I don't know what I'm going to do with all these jokes, but maybe I'll save them for after the dinner. Seriously, I'm excited to be here to talk to you about something that has been a huge part of my life, something that I continue to be extremely passionate about, and that's the work of the Boys and Girls Clubs, and particularly the work of the Boys and Girls Clubs here in Pitt County, where I grew up. Now, I made the mistake earlier today of asking Jody Chafee to email me a list of the attendees just so I could kind of see who was going to be here. And I got to tell you, all that did was make me really, really nervous. Because when I looked at that list, I realized that the individuals in this room and the families that are represented in this room are without a doubt responsible for the success of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Pitt County. And in my 25-year career with Boys and Girls Clubs, I had a great opportunity to see Boys and Girls Clubs all over this country and even on military bases overseas. And I will tell you that none rival the support that the community here in Pitt County gives to the Boys and Girls Clubs here. So it's an impressive organization, and it was built by incredibly dedicated people, many of whom are in this room. So I'm honored to talk to you about it tonight. I want to talk to you about Boys and Girls Clubs, and you heard about the growth of the clubs here in Pitt County. And it's been a long time and a lot of work since the humble beginnings at the fairgrounds, to the club on Skinner Street, to the club on Arlington Boulevard, to this, what everybody called the Taj Mahal at the time that it was built, this club, and then the growth into Ayden and into Farmville and north of the river and then into Jarvis. And with the expansion, it has allowed us to provide safe havens for a lot of kids. You heard the number, 700 kids a day today. And I'll tell you, that's a great thing. And if we did nothing other than open those doors and provide a safe, positive place for those kids to go every afternoon and provide caring adults for them to interact with, then we would be doing this community a great service. But I want to challenge us all tonight because I want to tell you that that's not good enough anymore. With what's going on in the lives of kids today, we have to be more than just a safe place. I mean, you've already heard enough about what we're up against, and you see from the video that Boys and Girls Clubs, when you boil it down, we're really about three things. We're about healthy lifestyles, we're about character and citizenship, and we're about academic success. And let me just give you a little bit more of a case for support here in those three areas. Healthy lifestyles, we are raising the first generation of children who have a shorter life expectancy than their parents. Academic success, you heard the number, 30% of ninth graders in this country don't graduate with their class. If you happen to be a minority student, then the odds grow to 50%. Character and citizenship, we have the United States of America, without a doubt, the greatest country in the world. We have 5% of the world's population. We boast 25% of the world's prison population. 75% of those people in prison have no high school diploma. You can connect the pieces very quickly. So we, as Boys and Girls Clubs, Boys and Girls Clubs of Pitt County, we are uniquely positioned, like no other organization in this community, to impact the lives of the kids who need us most in those areas. We cannot afford to waste that opportunity. It's going to take us getting a lot more serious about getting more kids in our clubs more often, about keeping those kids into their teen years, about providing a more intentional program, and all of that is going to take resources. It's going to take facility resources, and I'll tell you that the Boys and Girls Clubs of Pitt County is light years ahead of 99% of the Boys and Girls Club organizations out there. Because of the generosity of you and particularly specific families in this room, we have great facilities to offer our kids. So that's not an issue for us. It's going to take people resources. It's going to take more people getting involved volunteering. It's going to take more actively engaged board members. It's going to take more of the incredible staff members that we have here at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Pitt County. And yes, it's going to take money. It's going to take money to provide for those resources. And a lot of times you come to these events and people ask you for a gift. I want to clarify. I'm not going to ask you for a gift. I'm going to ask you for an investment. A gift is something you give and you don't expect anything in return. I'm not asking you to do that. We're going to ask you to make an investment in the Boys and Girls Clubs, and like any other investment you make, we're going to ask you to consider the return. Now, you saw it on the screen. They stole my thunder. Here's the one number you need to know, and I could give you reams of documents and evaluations and proof in black and white that Boys and Girls Clubs work. The only one you need to remember is that 57%. 57% of Boys and Girls Club alumni that were surveyed said that the Boys and Girls Club literally saved their life. There is no greater return on an investment. That's what we have to have in Pitt County. 57% of alumni, just like me, found the Boys and Girls Club at just the right time in their life. And I'm going to tell you, this is where it gets real tough for me in Pitt County, because I've had the opportunity to share my story in a lot of places, and it's always difficult and it's always nerve-wracking, but when you're looking out at a crowd full of the people that put you where you are and the people that were are your neighbors and your friends, it gets a little more difficult, so you just have to bear with me. But I want to share a very personal story with you because I want you to understand just one small, very small example of the power of the Boys and Girls Club. And I can't stand here and tell you that the Boys and Girls Club saved my life physically, because I wasn't going through those kind of things when I found the Boys and Girls Club. But I can absolutely tell you without a doubt that the Boys and Girls Club saved me from throwing away all my potential. And so thus, it did save my life. I grew up here in Greenville, not very far from this building, and you don't remember too much when you're little. We all know that. I remember that I was blessed enough to be born into a very good family. I had a loving mother, and a loving father. And, you know, when I was young, I thought everything was right with the world. We lived in a nice neighborhood. We lived in a nice house. We had nice things. We drove nice cars. And I say that because at that time in my life, that was all I ever saw. And that was all I ever knew. Everybody in my neighborhood lived that way. Everybody in my school lived that way. Everybody in my church lived that way. And as a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old kid, I just figured everybody lived that way. And then when I was about 6.5 or 7 years old, my life got turned upside down. And that was when I found out that my parents were getting a divorce. And I'm not going to go into the details with you that I may go into with other groups, but I want to tell you that, and many of you were involved in our lives at that time, it wasn't a pleasant time for our family. And I don't remember too much about it. I have some very vivid memories of some of it, and I want to share one of those with you tonight. We had this ill-conceived notion. I had 2 older brothers and an older sister. And we had this ill-conceived notion as our parents were going through this divorce that when they would communicate with each other, that anytime my dad would come home to get belongings or whatever he needed to do, we thought that the longer we could keep our parents in the same room, the better chance maybe we'd have that they would reconcile and they would find a way to work it out. And so anytime my dad would come to our house to get his belongings, we would try to stall him. We would take turns, and we were trying to stall him. We would, talk to him about the sky being blue or whatever. And so one night my dad came, and this particular night, I really, really wanted my dad to stay. And so I'm thinking in my mind, how can I stall him? How can I stall him? How can I stall him? And he's hustling out to his car in the driveway, and we had 3 little brick steps on the back of our house about the size of these on the front of the stage. And so I decided as he was traipsing across the driveway that if I got hurt, that surely my dad would stay and he would spend some more time with us. And so as my dad was walking across the driveway, I pretended like I fell down those brick steps. And I remember very vividly laying at the bottom of those steps, kicking, screaming, fake crying, looking out of one eye, thinking, he's going to turn around. He's going to turn around. Now, I'm going to tell you, he never looked over his shoulder. He got in his car, and he drove away. And it's something that he and I dealt with until his passing a few years ago. And I tell you that for one reason. That is the lowest point I have ever experienced in my life. And God willing will be the lowest point that I ever experience in my life. Now, I was fortunate enough that I was also born to an incredible mom. And she pulled it together, and she did everything she had to do to make sure that we had what we needed. And many people in this room did the right thing by us and took care of our family and gave us all kinds of assistance, financial assistance, spiritual support, whatever we needed. And we would have never made it without that. But I'll tell you, we struggled, and we went through some tough times as a family. And I look back now and say, hey, that's the best thing that ever happened, because it made us all much better people. But it was tough to deal with at the time. And by the time I got to middle school, I wasn't a bad kid, but I wasn't a stellar kid either. I wasn't headed to be the valedictorian or anything else. I'll be honest with you, I was just kind of going through the paces.